So, firewall as a service, quick overview demonstration. I'm just going to run through some of the more common features, the differentiation features, and give you a bit of a flavour of what you can achieve from firewall as a service. Very loose agenda. First thing I wanted to show you was the network architecture, so where firewall as a service actually sits on the network, and how that relates to effectively customer network. And then we're going to go through the common features and really the differentiators over your bog standard on-premise firewall. So a big focus on the unified threat management features and also its VPN capabilities. All of that's within the portal, and I'll obviously walk through the portal and show you how easy that is to use. So starting off with then network architecture. So firewall as a service is deployed within the Spitfire core network. Fundamentally, it separates a customer's MPLS network with the internet. So all traffic that's going from a private element of an MPLS network towards the internet or vice versa will traverse that firewall. So we're managing that gateway. So you can class this as perimeter security for the local network. Now I mentioned MPLS. Clearly MPLS is targeted at multi-site customers, all of which are connected into the MPLS. But effectively, you can also make a multi-site customer by utilizing the VPN capabilities of firewall as a service. So you've got offices outside the private network as well as offices inside the private MPLS network. Also, it's very suitable, as we know, for single site customers with Ethernet circuits. So on the left-hand side of that diagram, if you ignore the branch offices and just look at head office, going into an MPLS and firewall as a service, that architecture is perfectly valid as well. So this is not just for multi-site customers. Okay. So as I say, we're going to focus on the capabilities of the firewall itself, walk through the portal, but also look at how we bring in these remote sites of remote workers into the network. So that really is the end of the PowerPoint. Let's actually log on to the service. Just going to stop that screen and start the next one. Okay, so here you are confronted when you log on with, in this case, an expired notice. I was previously logged on, but the logon page into the firewall. This is unique to each individual user within a business, but obviously the business is going to have its own portal as well. It is multi-tenanted. There's dozens, hundreds of customers on each set of firewalls, but this bit is unique to each customer. Just get my credentials up. Complex passwords, of course, so too difficult for me to remember or type correctly. Okay, so when you log on, it takes you into your either most recently visited page or your favorite. So in this case, what I've got this set up as a favorite is a dashboard. I'm going to log on and instantly see what's going on. Very easy management. What you'll see at the top right-hand side here is we have what's known as a virtual domain. Each customer would have its own virtual domain. In this case, this one's called demo, but clearly that would be the customer name up there. And then from there, you can see the user that's logged in. So my name is Sales on here. And you can use this option to change your password, check the build, etc., or log out, most importantly. Okay. Obviously, that's going to vary if you log on as a different user. You've then got things like notifications and alerts, which are related to that user. So if I've set up notifications and then there's a problem and I log on, I'm going to instantly see a little flashing number 1 there or something. Okay. So I've got a nice, good dashboard as to what's going on. Everything within the dashboard is effectively multi-contextual, is probably a better way, or easy to navigate from a different way. So you can use the standard menus, you can drill down into different features. Alternatively, you can go on to most of the features that you see within the window and see that they are hyperlinks. So by hovering over them, you're going to get further information. But also by, for example, right-clicking here, I can then have the option to drill down. So I can drill down and look at that particular user. This is obviously me. To It's got my name associated to that IP address. That can be automatically set up with Active Directory. So it'll pull it from Active Directory logons. Alternatively, you're based on IP addressing. And what I can then look at here is effectively the web browsing history of this person. Now, within this, I will come back to this in more detail, but the point being is, you've got this way of navigating through. So from here, I can look at a particular user, look to see where they've been browsing by destination. Or alternatively, I can come on here, look at sources. There's the source. That would obviously list all the users on here. And I can, again, drill down into the same place. Alternatively, I could go to the destinations. That's obviously me logged on now. Let's change that to 7 days so we've got a bit more content. Okay. And then what I could do is filter that down by various options there. Or I can drill down from here as well. So you really can drill down from lots of different places to get to where you want to be. So depending on what your threat or your risk or your issue is, you can actually look from what the most appropriate thing is. So I can look for, I want to look for a website, or I want to look for a person's activity, or I want to look for a breach. I can drill down from any of those angles. Okay. And that's basically, as I say, drilling down from the dashboard or from FortiView, which is this window here. Okay. So very easy to navigate around the portal. Everything, as you can see, is nice and intuitive. So pretty images, full text. We've got customizable graphs. We can change the filters. So, for example, I can look at the last week, last hour. I can change the view. So in this case, let's have a look at a bubble chart rather than the table of text. Lots and lots of threats and options. Okay. So that's very fundamentally what's going on in terms of your, in this case, web browsing UTM capabilities. Just winding the clock back a bit, as I say, this is a firewall. It sits at the end of the network. So also within these dashboard capabilities, you've got other views, and these are customizable, and you can create your own. So we've set one up here for NOC, and all the NOC is concerned with is how much bandwidth usage in place. So at the moment, you can see there's a bit of a background bandwidth utilization, not particularly exciting. I've only got one phone set up on this network at the moment, but I could see effectively a trend of usage over the last 7 days. Oh, I've got a bit of a peak there. So I can see my bandwidth utilization, or in fact, obviously if I've got a problem, that might be spiking massively, or it could be really low. It's a very quick and easy way of seeing how much bandwidth is being used, how many sessions are in place. And there are other views that we can add to this as well. And that's, we can expand these out, we can customize them. Remove them, change the settings. So what else do I want to look at? In this case, we can look at them, say LAN, WAN, if we're running wireless access. If we're running particular subnets, we can change it as well. So lots and lots of filters available. Okay. As far as being a firewall, it's very easy to set up as well. Obviously, we set the firewall up by default in the first place. But once we do that, we then look at setting up as you would a firewall. So these are the physical interfaces, which will be assigned to each customer. You can look to see whether there's any access points assigned, which ports are in place, and then you can start looking at things like static routes. Are there any on here? Yeah, there are some static routes. You can also have a look at, where should we look at? Things like radius servers, users, and groups. So all the type of stuff you'd set up on a normal firewall device. But as I say, what we're going to focus on today is very much the UTM features and how to utilize those and how to drill down. So going back to our dashboard then, what we've got as we identified, oops, sorry, let's look at our favorites, it's easiest to start there. Let's have a look here. So we can see this is the web utilization of our business. And you can see most of the time is spent here in Outlook.com. As I say, the data here is generated from a mobile phone app, running lots of apps and things. So not unusual. You'll also see some strange things on here, like BBC on there. Chartbeat, if you don't know what Chartbeat is, they provide content into the likes of BBC, Microsoft, etc. So nothing really unusual there in terms of usage. Clearly, what you want to be trying to avoid from a business is things like Facebook being a massive circle, or some very strange website appearing on there, which would imply that you've got a DDoS attack or a big ramp up in usage. Okay, but these you can drill down on them as well. So let's just drill down on that session. So I can see on there how much data is utilized by that application. In this case, it's only me. I'm the only person on there. And we can look at how much time is spent on Outlook.com in terms of the destinations within that. There's lots of IPs that are held within that domain, so you can even drill down of where those locations are. Obviously, Outlook.com or Microsoft Office 365 is a big domain. You can look at the number of sessions, and you can determine effectively what are these classed as. So they're either unrated, so it's just general traffic or background traffic, or in this case, most of this, as you'll see, is web-based email. Okay. So very easy to see all the way down to a granular level the type of traffic that's passing through the firewall. Okay. Probably the biggest question is what websites are people going to? So rather than just normal applications. So if we go back to the user again. Oh, I forgot I could do that. You can double click on this. You can look at the logon and you can drill down further from that perspective as well, which is a nice little feature. So let's go back to the sources here. This is me. I'll look at my sessions there. Okay. Oh, sorry, I'm still filtered on Outlook, so let's go back. Okay, let's look on here. And let's look at websites. Okay, so lots of websites there. Chartboost, as you say, I've never been to that website. If you have a Google, you realise you run it all the time. And whenever you're browsing, it is collating all of your background history. Okay. BBC, Apple, etc. So lots and lots of web traffic there. Nothing really scary. That's all quite nice. So if I scroll down here, this is all good. It's all sessions passing through. It's all allowed traffic. Nice and easy, nothing horrible. Let's have a look at the categories and see where that sits. So unrated. Now, the reason you get a lot of unrated websites really is these background facilities. So things like Chartbeat, it's not somewhere I'm actually planning to go to. It's like an API service. Okay. But you can also see down here things like I've got job search. Oh, hang on a minute. I don't like job search on there. Oh, hang on a minute though. 0 time. So clearly I've had 4 attempts to get to job searches, but no data is being passed. Okay. And the reason for that is we've got a policy that we've added to block that traffic. Okay, you see it says pass through here and then block later on. It's because I decided to put that up for a demo purpose. So you can see at this time here, I started blocking that traffic. Okay, so you can see that we are successfully blocking stuff. In this case, it's based on category. And when we look at the web category here, there's the job search. It gives you some examples on there. So you can view the sessions. So you can also see the URLs that I've been trying to go to. So you're just confirming that. The other thing you do get on here is policy. So everything is based on policy. So it may be that you don't want me to look at job searches, but clearly someone in HR wants to be able to get to job websites. So we would have a different policy applied to us, either on a user basis or on a network basis. So in this case, this has been applied to me as someone connecting via SSL VPN. But we could equally apply that to me as a user within a subnet or within a Active Directory or a user group within the business. Okay. So what I'm going to show you now we've kind of understood the amount of detail you can get to, is really how to manage that. So what we start off with is policies and objects, and these really are highly configurable is best place to start with. So the first thing is we'll look at the IPv4 policy. Now, IPv4 policy, there's also an IPv6 policy that you can add. I haven't got it set up on here, but this would effectively replicate what we've got here. The IPv4 policy, clearly what we have is each route that goes through that firewall can adopt its own individual policy. So for people who are sitting on the local network, we've got a demo LAN to WAN and a demo WAN to LAN for policy. So one going in and one going out. Okay. So the going out, the LAN to WAN policy, is really what we're applying to users and how they can access and pass traffic through the firewall. So as you can see here, we have a policy here assigned to a restricted user group, which effectively, descriptively, is defined to block social media and restrict applications to a certain extent. Whereas the standard LAN to outside, so people who don't fall within this group but are on that network, won't have the same restricted local access, application access and web access. They've just got a default web filter. So if you put this as an example, if you're in a school, you might want to have staff using this one called LAN to outside, although we can call it staff, and this one may be pupils, more restricted. Okay. Very easy to set those up and determine who then goes in which group. You could also have, for example, here, if they're accessing via wireless access, clearly people under wireless access are going to go into a particular subnet, and then from the same aspect there, all the way around, Wi-Fi to internet, you would apply one of these policies here simply by going, which policy do I want to have? Well, I don't want to allow any social media for people on that network. Oh, sorry, I've got to put that one on as well. Okay, I won't change this. Let's not mess it up by playing around with this, because that's disabled. Okay, so fundamentally highly configurable, very easy to configure. You just need to determine what your internal policies are. So when I go on about one of these web policies, what do we actually mean? And if we go into the policy, actually, you can see I'm using the SSL VPN tunnel. So the policy that I've been using, you can see I'm listed there as Andy, is this policy. So let's have a look at that policy. What does it actually mean? Okay. So fundamentally what you're doing here is you're picking categories to apply every website to, and then determining based on that category how it is treated. And when I say how it's treated, whether it is allowed, monitored, blocked, warned, or requires further authentication. Okay. So the obvious categories in here that people tend to block, things like adult mature content. So things like alternative beliefs, you might go, actually, that's fine. I don't mind people having alternative beliefs, but clearly gambling, nudity, I would like to block, a fairly normal process. Well, we also have a probably more specific to each business. So as I explained earlier, I've blocked job search on here. So it's blocking everything that's categorized as job search. Won't necessarily filter out 100% of job adverts, but it is going to filter out a website which is categorized as a job search website. And that's done by the top level domain name aspect of the URL. Okay. So I'll give you one example on that. If you go onto LinkedIn, linkedin.com is not categorized as a job search website, but clearly has job search capability within that. It's not going to be filtered out directly utilizing this. However, what you can do is find LinkedIn and you can do a customization to say jobs.linkedin.com is blocked, whereas linkedin.com is allowed. Okay, and you do that using an override capability, which I'll go on to in a second. Just to show you down here, further options on here. Sorry, what I was going to show is if you want to change one of these, it's very simple. As an admin, you just go onto there and you go, actually, I want to monitor that, or I want to allow that, or I want to block it. It really doesn't matter. Okay, let's just cancel that so I don't overwrite it. Okay, so very easy to customize at the top level. What that also means is what you're not doing as a rule is creating massive whitelists and blacklists, because a website that's been, let's say, categorized as offensive, you determine is not offensive, and you just add it as a whitelist based on domain name. Really clumsy way of doing it. It can get very, very out of hand very quickly. Okay. So what you can then do is do overrides, which I will find in a second. So there's a couple of them. Let's see if we got, web rating overrides. So, for example, here, the BBC, we have classed as meaningless content when it was originally news and media. And then we can assign a policy to meaningless content. Oops, just hover over that. Okay. Basically saying we really don't care about it. It's bland. Let it carry on in this case. So it's rated as general use. Okay, but you could easily edit that or pick another one. Okay, and that's done very much on full URL. So if we just go on here, URL, let's look at LinkedIn. Not every website appears on this. We can look at the rating on LinkedIn.com. There you can see it's adult business. Sorry, it's general interest business. Clearly, I don't want to recategorize it as adult content, but I could class it as, let's say, bandwidth consuming or anything else. Change that. So what that's now going to do is adopt that as if it's in a different category. Much easier way rather than managing blacklists, whitelists, and then changing those because you get differences of opinion in the business. Okay. So very much that's managing domains, URLs, etc., and reporting on them. You can do a similar level with applications. I don't have any set up here at the moment, but you also have the element of application control. Okay, so I showed you before that you have this profile called where is it? Where was it? Policies, objects, restricted applications here. So let's drill down that way rather than going back through the menus. So drill down is much easier. Okay. And what we're doing here is for this policy, we're determining actually it's quite restricted. So we've said that social media applications are going to be blocked. Okay. So within that, let's actually have a look because we can be quite very specific on that. Okay. So social media in there, let's just look at those. Oops. A few signatures. So lots of signatures in social media. Let's have a look. Does LinkedIn sit in there? Okay, there's LinkedIn there. So we can decide, actually, we don't mind LinkedIn, but what we're not going to allow is people to post to it. So we can actually edit the signature just to allow some of these and not allow others. So very granular level of editing and changing around. Okay, and you do that by doing effectively overrides. So we go into an override here. We look at the application and we're going to look at, as I said, LinkedIn. Let's say we're not going to allow, in fact, we're not going to allow the messaging, posting, or upload. Okay, simple as that. So that's now blocked. Another example of that, if we just look on that, WhatsApp. So on WhatsApp, we might allow WhatsApp fine, WhatsApp calling, WhatsApp web, no problem. But what we want to do is block file transfer. And as you can see, we can build this as a full override. It's within a particular policy, but you can generally, I would recommend that's done by application rather than by a group like this, like social media. Okay, I'll cancel that out. But you could do it as a no file transfer, and then pick up the file transfer protocols from each application and do it that way. Or you can just say restrict WhatsApp and do it that way. It's entirely up to you and how much you plan to use that. So you've got this very flexible mechanism to allow and disallow components of applications. Now, if an application isn't an off-the-shelf one, it's something you created yourself, then you can do exactly the same as well. You just have to create a custom application signature, and you do it in exactly the same way. You just need to know a specific protocol, port, etc. that application is being used on, and you can identify the type of traffic that way. One thing I should have pointed out earlier, I've mentioned about easy navigation, the fact that it's all nice and tidy and intuitive. You'll also see there's this context-sensitive help available throughout, and simply anything that looks like this, online help, video tutorials, learn how to, will hook out, and Fortigate offer a very, very intuitive set of what they call cookbooks and tutorials, which will step you through every element of setting these up. So it will explain exactly each option that you select. Okay. You've also got these little hints here. So you hover over any of the eye, it'll actually tell you some more detail about that. That's really about the less common features. QUIC as an example, it's very specific to Chrome and Google, so you might not be particularly aware of that. Hence, it's giving you a little reminder or point there. Okay. So, really focused on the two key areas. So, filtering web applications, filtering web content. We can also filter email content if you've got on-premise email servers. It's generally turned off as most people are using cloud email, but it just looks at the SMTP feed. And also what we're doing at the same time is looking at any file transfer. So looking at virus signatures, we can open up secure packets, so SSL level inspection as well. Other than that, the other thing I wanted to focus on was connecting remotely. So the remote access. Now, I've already shown you VPN users here. I'm set up as a VPN user. There are free VPN clients for the common platforms. So iOS, Android, and that's both tablet and mobile phone format, as well as Apple OS and Windows. Okay, so I think there's also a Linux client as well. So you can actually download clients for most things, but you can also have browser access as well. Okay. So that's your SSL VPN or your client-side VPN. Now we've got this set up at the moment as a tunnel, purely because there's no resources really to access within the LAN here. It's purely for demo networking. So you can either use it as an SSL for remote access. So I want to be able to work at home and go through the firewall to access my local files and servers. So we can set it that way. That will also give you remote access back out to the internet through the firewall. Or you can set it up in simple tunnel mode, as we've got it up here, which allows the remote user to connect to the firewall before it connects to the internet. And therefore, that remote user is forced with all of the policies of that firewall. So you are effectively securing your remote user. Also, you could use it to restrict their usage, but more realistically, you're securing them. Rather than them being open internet, they are going through a firewall using your trusted company policy. So two ways you can utilize that. It's not just for that remote access, it's also that remote security. Okay. The other aspect of VPNs is obviously connecting remote sites. And through that, effectively, we've got the IPsec capability. So I don't think there's any IPsec tunnels set up here. There aren't, no. So what we can do is just create a new one. But to help us do that, there are some templates. And these effectively are little cookbooks that tell you exactly how to set this up with common firewall standards. So if I was doing, for example, a site-to-site Cisco, I can have a look at that. And it's going to tell me all of the settings that I'm recommended to use to connect through to a Cisco firewall. There are more of these available, these templates available if required. Okay. So what I've done, I've had a look at that template, nice and easy. I've got everything I need, great. I know what I'm doing. I can now look at the tunnel here, create a new one, call it what I want, and then effectively create these settings. Again, more cookbooks, tutorials, and online help to assist with that. But at least you're going to be armed with the defaults that other vendors prefer or will set up as their defaults, or what they'll call the headings, which is quite the difference. Sometimes of getting it right is that one vendor will call it something, another vendor will call it something else. Okay, so nice and easy to set up a tunnel. Once it's all set up, there is a option to test that as well. I think it's back a page actually. So we can test that connectivity if there was one there as well. So very easy to set up IPsec tunnels, 25 included out of the box. You can have more if you've got higher bandwidth. And that's the same with SSLs. I briefly mentioned SSLs. In terms of users on the firewall and identifying users, a couple of ways you can do it. You can manually set them up on the firewall. So here is a list of people, me and me. Alternatively, you can set up groups. and add those users to the groups. So, for example, here you've got user 1, user 2, these SSL groups, and you'd add the users into those groups and use those to assign a policy. Or alternatively, is use LDAP, or so Active Directory, or another LDAP source to link your users to. So LDAP serves a much better, and this can be Office 365, for example, or on-premise Exchange, on-premise Active Directory. I think Google LDAP works on it as well. Other LDAP sources to effectively go in here, find your LDAP credentials, test connectivity, test the user credentials, and away you go. All of your users from that source are now set up as users on this firewall. Okay. You then obviously have to make sure those users are in the right groups to assign the right permissions. Another couple of features I'm just going to quickly look over. Full logging and monitoring is built in with this, so you can have look through of every single log that's gone through rather than looking through the dashboard. You can get much more granular. You can create reports out of this. You can have notifications, exceptions, etc., and the alerts. And you've also got here lots of monitoring capability, so you can set up lots of monitors here. I'm not going to go through any of these in detail today. Maybe that one's for another session. Okay. So that pretty much sums up an overview of the firewall, covering the main features, predominantly UTM and connectivity via VPN. Any questions after that, I'd be more than happy to answer.